Welcome to Create the Edge. It's a pleasure for Yusuf and I to welcome our esteemed guests on an education special.
It's an absolute pleasure to actually, share screen space with amazing stalwarts in the world of education. So introducing firstly, all the way from Sydney, we've got Karen McGufficke Cleary. She is, she's always been in education all her life. She's a diverse learning and inclusion educator who's passionate about every child receiving their rightful education. So that's a beautiful, beautiful thing, Karen, that you're doing. So kudos to you, and it's an absolute pleasure to have you on this episode here at Create the Edge. Would love to also welcome on board Professor Gary Martin, who is the Chief Executive of the Australian Institute of Management, based out of Perth, Western Australia. So thank you so much, Professor Gary. It's an absolute pleasure to welcome you on the show. We've been interacting for a little while over LinkedIn, and it's so good to actually sort of speak with you directly, face to face, after so long.
Thanks for the invitation.
It's an absolute pleasure, Gary. And would love to sort of also welcome back on the show Dr. Ai Addyson-Zhang, who is an Adobe education leader and the founder of Classroom Without Walls. You may remember her from her previous episode on Create the Edge with Brian Schulman, and it's an absolute pleasure to welcome Ai back on the show as an educator who is looking into the future of education moving forward across the world. So thank you so much, Ai, for taking the time out of your schedule.
Oh, thank you.
And lastly, Kasturi, it's an absolute pleasure to welcome you back on Create the Edge. Kasturi is a preschool educator who believes in teaching about life. So, all four of you, it's such a pleasure to have all four of you on board, because I'm a firm believer that teachers and educators are the artisans who actually mold the future leaders of tomorrow. So all of you, combined, on screen, I've got here, over 70 years of education experience among the four of you. And it's such a pleasure to welcome all of you to have this discussion. So we'd love to give our network a bit more insight regarding who all of you are, something that they wouldn't ideally guess about you. So I would request Professor Gary Martin to actually tell us a little bit more regarding who you are, what you do, the person behind the persona. Is there a difference between the real life and the real life? We'd love to know.
There's not really. What you see is what you get, but I will tell everyone that, in fact, when I was studying right from very young, I used to sell newspapers, and that was the way I actually saved enough money to go off to study and do all the things that I used to do. So a newspaper salesperson, or as we used to say then, a newspaper boy, I don't even know if they have them anymore. But that's the way that was my part-time job.
Right. That's very interesting, actually, Gary, because when I first moved to Melbourne back in 2003, my first job was delivering newspapers as well. So it's very interesting, and I remember I used to do the graveyard shift, as you like to call it, right between 12 a.m. and 5 a.m. So oh my word, that wasn't easy, especially in February in Melbourne when it was so darn cold sometimes. So yes, so I completely understand where you're coming from, Gary, and thank you so much for sharing that about your something that we wouldn't have ideally guessed about you. So really appreciate that. So Karen, would love to know a little bit more regarding the person behind the persona.
Hi, Joseph, and thank you for having me. Look, again, what you see is pretty much what you get. I think I pretty much think and breathe education in a lot of ways, perhaps even to the boredom of my family at times, genuinely. However, I suppose the thing that I probably like doing more than anything is reading, and I pretty much read anything that's put in front of me and find something interesting about it. Anything I see in written text that might tweak my interest, could be books about business or anything. So that's where social media has been a blessing, really, because you can pretty much read anything about anything these days and then go further and see if you want to know more about it. So reading's probably one of my best part-times. The other small thing is that I like to scribble. I call it scribble. It's little bits of art. And that's probably the way I relax more than anything, is to do some sort of bits of what I call scribble, but little artworks. That's my fun.
Awesome. That's very interesting. So, I mean, if you don't mind asking, what's the most profound book that you've read in the recent past?
Oh. Look, I've been burying myself in education for the last little while in, I guess, just at the end of my master's at the moment. I guess anything about socialization and emotional learning. That's what I spent my time reading. Yeah. Absolutely. And, you know, I'm just going to connect that back to Professor Gary, actually. I absolutely love the articles that you do on LinkedIn, as well as in all the other, you know, the business journals and the newspapers as well. They are so enlightening, especially dealing with emotional intelligence and social learning, which is, I mean, kudos to you, Gary. It's really eye-opening, some of those things. So I would invite Ai to share with us something else which we wouldn't ideally guess about her.
Yeah, my story is a little bit different from Karen. And even though right now and for the past almost 2 decades, and I'm very passionate about education, but growing up in China, I hated learning so much. I almost dropped out of school after high school. I wasn't interested in going to college, and my parents really forced me to attend college. And but after I came to the United States in my early 20s, that's when I truly started to enjoy learning again. But when I was in China, I couldn't hate learning more. I guess that experience really planted a seed for my passion in education, which I can share more later. And something personal about me is, I think last time I shared, I loved meditation. Yep. I'm actually going to a meditation retreat next week, but this time I'm going to share, I actually also love eating fruits. I love eating blueberry, like apple, watermelon. I can eat a whole watermelon by myself. And so that's how much I love eating fruits. We buy bananas by cases. And so that is just something interesting about myself on a personal level.
Awesome. So anyone in the network who needs a fruit fixation, you know where to go. And moving on to Kasturi, please tell us something that we wouldn't ideally guess about you.
Okay, I think you guys know that I'm an educator. I'm a yoga instructor. I'm a humanitarian, but I sometimes do crazy stuff as well. I love to create these short videos. And I'm gonna laugh. You know TikTok? Yeah. I think some of my close friends only know. I usually share those stories in FB, but not my LinkedIn friends. I love creating those like short lip sync comedies and talent videos. So that's the crazy side of me. I love doing that. I get crazy with that. So I don't think so my LinkedIn friends know about that.
Oh, you're going to get so many more followers regarding that on TikTok now. Let me put it that way. So because I know exactly how crazy you can be on TikTok. So
exactly, that's right. Yeah. So that's the thing you're going to be shocked about. Yeah.
Awesome. So thank you so much for sharing something that we wouldn't ideally have guessed about you, or your network wouldn't have guessed about you. So really appreciate you sharing this with this part with us.